Please support this podcast by purchasing Tio MacDonald books, found on both Audible and Amazon. Thank you.
This is Global Tellink. You have a prepaid call from
Quentin St. James,
an inmate at the California State Prison, San Quentin, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tellink.
Hello, this is Tio MacDonald of the East Oakland Times. Today, rejoicing in a new podcast who is called, and this is Quentin St. James. Hello, Quentin St. James. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
Very good, very good. It's been raining cats and dogs. It's February 2019, and we're grateful to have you on the line. Quentin St. James, a podcast is called One Main Street Dead Man Talking. One Main Street Dead Man Talking. Quentin St. James is, in fact, on death row. And just so we know, the listeners know, how long have you been on death row in California?
Since 1996.
1996, so 20 years, over 20 years. And
yes, sir.
Okay, very good. And we had talked before, and the intent of the podcast today is we're going to kind of get into some of Quentin St. James' early life. And the first incident, or the first memory, in fact, is where we're going to begin of Quentin St. James. We're gonna begin actually in his first early childhood memory. So thank you again for calling. Thank you for podcasting with the East Oakland Times. Looking forward to working with you.
All right, thank you. Well, I'd like to say hello to everyone out there that's listening, and to thank them for the opportunity to be able to share some of my life's experiences, and to express that it's really my sincere desire to help other people, especially at-risk youth, because my story goes back to when I was very young, and one of my earliest memories was it was late one night. We had been to some kind of a church meeting as a family, absent my dad, and we had come home. It was late on a Sunday evening, to all of our belongings being thrown out on the yard of the house. And as I recall, walking up onto the porch of the house and gazing in through the window.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
And seeing my dad sitting at the table. And his eyes were a strange glare of red. And my next memory is of a group of people coming to my mother's aid and taking 6 of us children in. And of course, she was at the time pregnant with her 7th, and helping my mother escape from a very abusive relationship. So we were, put on a bus and traveled from, Houston, Texas to San Diego, California, to make a new start in life. So that's kind of where my story begins. It was a difficult period for my mom back in the mid-50s with 6 children and pregnant with another, and starting out in a strange city without not a lot of help. So with 6 children and pregnant with a 7th, things were kind of difficult. And in those days, welfare assistance was about some commodities, dry goods, and vouchers for rent and utilities. So my mother was kind of an industrious person, and she really wanted to make it on her own. So she was not having any formal training or anything. She got a job as a waitress. And at that time, I think the wages were like 75 cents an hour, and she was dependent on tips. And so it wasn't easy for us. And at an early age, I started ditching school and shining shoes along University Avenue in San Diego, hitting bars, and shining shoes for sailors, soldiers, Marines, and became pretty well known. But, I laugh because my mother used to, when she would take us kids to the store or something, strange men were always stopping and greeting me and saying, "Hi, little Jimmy, is that your mom?" And she was curious how I knew him. And in time, what I was trying to do actually worked against the situation, and it brought some unnecessary tension on my mom. And my ditching school, and having running, being able to run loose through the city and doing what I was doing. The state kind of stepped in, and I was taken away and placed into foster care. Eventually, that happened with the rest of the children. I wasn't able to adjust, so I ended up running away a lot, and then came to detention centers, and I started getting in trouble. That's kind of how things began for me at an early age. To give you an example,
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Today we have, it's things that I experienced then are more prolific, and whereas back in my day, it was isolated issues, especially children, young children of my age. I was like, 6, 7, 8 years old, my first contact with the law. And to give you an example, my first arrest was at 7 years old. I had broken into a projector room at a drive-in theater and stole a 38, and then went into a Jimco store and was arrested for trying to rob the place. So, that seemed very drastic at that time. It was outrageous, but it's not so uncommon today. And that's why I think I have a relevant story, to reach out to people today.
Yes.
Because, my story kind of goes off independent of the rest of the family because of the serious nature of the problems I got into. And I can kind of fast forward to the age of 13, being blown off a state turnpike in the state of Kansas at high-speed pursuit from the Highway Patrol. And that's after having escaped from a detention center in Missouri and being faced with federal transportation of stolen vehicle, illegal, unlawful flight to escape prosecution. At that time, I was facing reform school in a federal system, ended up in a state reform school, spent better part of my teenage years there, and then from then on into the drug culture of the time, in the late 60s, and a short stint in the service where I received a general discharge under honorable terms because of my drug use and drug activities. And then later on, ended up in prison in the state of Texas on a first-degree murder charge. So I have a long history, and I'm familiar with a lot of trouble. And it was there about the age of 24 that I taught myself to read. No one knew it. It was my big secret that I was illiterate. And the first thing the first book that I taught myself to read on was a story called Centennial by James A. Michener. Took time. At the same time, I got a history lesson, you know, and ended up in prison in Texas where I got a formal education and high school diploma and some junior college, and then I was released on parole after serving a portion of a 30-year sentence, and then came back out here to California, and hereafter I was charged with another murder, which I'm presently serving time on, and received the death penalty. So that's kind of a brief history, and as I look out my window here today, which is a little 7-inch TV, and I watch what's going on in the world today, and things I hear and read about. I think there's a lot of people can identify with these stories today. Not so much the prison aspect and some of the serious crimes, but we live in a dysfunctional society today. And families, are disintegrating. And kids at risk, youth at risk. Doesn't seem like they have too many resources to turn to. So, over the years, I've had to.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Over the years, I've had to do some deep searching and to find answers. And I guess we can talk about that next.
Very good. Thank you, Quentin St. James, for this call. My apologies for the interruption, and looking forward to hearing back from you momentarily. Thank you, Quentin St. James.
Hi.
This is Global Tel Link. You have a prepaid call from
Quentin St. James,
an inmate at the California State Prison, San Quentin, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Hello, this is Tio MacDonald talking with Quentin St. James of the podcast One Main Street, Dead Man Talking. And if you'd like to contact Quentin St. James, he can be reached through the East Oakland Times. Just send all correspondence letters to P.O. Box 11572, Oakland, California, 94611. Those letters will be forwarded to Quentin St. James, and he can make the choice as to what to do. So it sounds like the disintegration of the family. You're a prime example of certain consequences that can occur with the disintegration of the family. Yours is probably an extreme example.
Yes, but sad to say, it's a prevalent reality thing. Excuse me, I can get emotional when I think about the things I see going on. It's really it's a source of grief in my life, and stings me all the way to my heart. If any of us, had the opportunity, to go back and maybe make a difference in another person's life, who wouldn't? But we overlook some of the opportunities that we have presently today to bare our souls and reach out. From my perspective right now, it's an unseen audience. As if I'm speaking to the wind, and my desire is that the wind would carry my words, touch a life of someone who may be in a situation right now and they just don't know what to do, and it seems like their only choice is, to resort to some kind of a violent act, or go to some extremes, in order to maybe just get attention. I guess one of the biggest issues today is that the subject of bullying. I hear a lot about that, and how some individuals have opted to resort to violence in schools and in their communities in order to it seemed like it was the only option they had in order to defend themselves. And the complacency that's around them of people who just stand by and allow these things to go to take place, because they just don't want to get involved. It's not my business. And we think, go away thinking, well, I hope things turn out well for that person, when we could step in and make a difference. Maybe the fear of being targeted ourselves or whatever stops us, whatever our motives are. It's really, as a society, it serves no purpose, or no good purpose, and it seems to be very duplicitous. But today in the environment that I live in, there's at any moment a situation can go bad, and the art of being able to diffuse a situation, be able to communicate effectively, and to be able to parties to walk away without anything seriously taking place is an art that I think a lot of us need to develop. Not just for ourselves, but to look out for our fellows.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of searching for something to add to this, but aren't we all a family? I hear this song on the radio at times. We all bleed the same, and we're all beautiful when we come together. What difference does it make what color clothes we wear? Or I'm just borrowing a phrase, but it's true. We are beautiful when we come together. There's so many things that divide us today.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
It starts when we're real young.
Yes. Your story, Quentin St. James, reminds me of the ghetto children stories because the East Oakland Times puts out My Crime series, which are biographies written by inmates on inmates. These are books, and we have those for sale on Amazon and Audible. But similar circumstances are with young people. For instance, a kid who grows up in a home with crack cocaine parents, as crack cocaine addicted parents. That kid's going to hit the streets. He's going to hit the streets because he doesn't want to see all that. It's too confusing. It's too etc. He's not getting the love. And it sounds like your mother cared for you, loved her children, and was doing her best, but was just couldn't be in 10 places at one time, and so you found yourself hitting the streets and doing some productive things. I mean, it turned on your mind to shine shoes at 7 years old.
Yeah, and as I look back on that, I got my world evolved around drug pushers, hookers, hardcore criminals, and prostitution and and all that at a very early age. I was, overexposed, but that became my world. That's what I became attracted to because it embraced me.
Yes.
And a lot of us think that children make choices because they want to feel to be a part of something. With me, I don't identify with that. My imagination got fed wrong, and I got caught up in this romantic attraction to the underworld and crime. That I romanticized that in my imagination, and that's what I wanted to be. That's what I wanted to be a part of. We see it a lot today in music videos. Some of these music videos that I view feed the imagination and romanticize, this, underworld that exists. And it's an attraction. And I see that, I was carried away by that. I thought it was, just, the best thing in the world for me to do.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
And in being in prison, I know how important it is to be accepted and belong to a group. A lot of the, let's face it, a lot of the shot callers and the founders of these gangs started in prison, and they mastered the ability to manipulate, and to bring people in and bring them under their wing, and make them feel important and needed and wanted, and to close their eyes, pull the wool over their eyes, so to speak, is that they were just using them, and that was part of the appeal was that to be a gangster is cool, it really it's attractive and it's very appealing, and that's kind of what I bought into. Today I choose to be my own man. I woke up. I said, this isn't real. This is a fantasy world I'm living in, and all it's got me is heartache and pain and trouble and a loss of everything.
Yes. The statement is a wheelchair, prison, or death.
Yeah. I've heard it put in other terms. I agree with that. I've heard it put hospitals, institutions, and death, and that's true. I'm in an institution, and I've been sentenced to be executed. I do have a hope and a prayer, through the appeal process, but it's slow. And my attitude today is not so much, I'm trying to change my story, or my future, as much as I'm wanting to reach out and touch other lives and change their future. And so that's in the process of doing these interviews is my ambition.
Yes.
Is that somehow, in some ways, my narrative will be able to, redirect, at-risk people who are at risk. I've been using the term children a lot, but this goes up to adulthood with many people today, especially the ones that will be listening here, and they're at-risk adults. I was there too. I've been at risk all my life. And I think we all are. And I made all the wrong choices because I didn't know there were good available choices for me. I had to learn. And my value system was something that was evolved from situation to situation. So I had situational ethics. And my prime need at that time was, getting by, and, not having any formal education or training and stuff like that. It made it difficult for me to set my sights on, what I call normal people were doing and, to make it in life. It was just out of my reach, and it wasn't until I got pretty deep in trouble that I was able to, to get education. And what happened with my education, which I think happens a lot in prison, and even now.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Is that people become educated. Like here we have educated criminals. The emphasis is put on education as opposed to, values, on morals. And I think that, most, the dysfunctionalism that's in society today, even in the schools, out there in public schools, people aren't given, a strong value system that develops, really good character in people's lives. And that's something I had to do myself.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
So maybe the next time we talk, we can, go into some of the disclosure as to how I acquired the value system that I have today.
Excellent. Thank you, Quentin St. James. And again, Quentin St. James' podcast is called One Main Street Dead Man Talking. Great title, and looking forward to doing exactly as he said on future calls, going into greater depth and understanding of how he became who he was, which is Quentin St. James was as deep as they go in terms of criminality. And we can already hear that, and he has a message that he's bringing to the public, and we're grateful to have him podcasting with us with the East Oakland Times. Thank you, Quentin St. James.
You're